think it's like the past participle form of the word or something.
Um,
Like
no, I'm pretty sure it's a present participle.
present. I did get the participle part right though.
Yeah, because he prays. It's like an ongoing thing.
That's
the
true.
prayed or has prayed would be like he has prayed would be the past participle.
Would have been praying. Throw some subjective in there.
Would have been going to pray. Throw a little bit of future into the past. Anyway, get into the 37th weird tense. Tenses are so strange.
And
we
English,
really only have like 4 or 5.
But English is
languages.
especially weird because like other languages have what, like 8 tenses?
Well, and also, I think it was like 12 in Latin.
12.
And I think
So-
Greek maybe even more than that.
Point being, other languages have a lot of tenses.
Mm-hmm.
English has loads of tenses. They're just all really wonky and stupid to use, so we don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, why would we? Because basically either something happened, or something is happening, or something's going to happen. I mean, that 3's enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
It did, it is, it will. What else? Yeah, but we've got a few others, but those are, I mean, that's the main 3 things.
Us Americans, we're simple people.
We do have the one that like where an action started in the past and goes on into the present or future. So we have some of those like that.
Yeah. But most of the time we just combine tenses together to say something.
And the other thing is we really only have like 3 when the verb only has like 3 forms.
Mm-hmm.
Like pray, praise, prayed, and then you have like praying. But so 4 even, but then we add other words onto that. Whereas in other languages, they have a different form for. They conjugate their verbs way more than we do. Makes it a lot more complicated. That's why when people talk about how hard it is to learn English, I'm just thinking, really? Have you ever studied another language? Because English is really pretty simplified. Kind of like with we talked about the. I mean, we have the.
Yeah.
Other languages. I mean, like Spanish has 4. French
Greek
and Spanish
has
is
28.
I thought it was 24. Is it?
Let's see. 3.
They have a lot more than we do ways of saying the.
3 times 8.
Yeah, that's 24.
24.
Not 28. Yeah, 28 would be 4 times 7, which is even more confusing. Right. But yeah, they have a lot, and I think Latin has like 6 or 8.
I thought Latin
like
didn't have definite articles, indefinite articles.
Latin does not have indefinite articles.
Well, no, neither does Greek. That's why Latin always threw me off.
Maybe
I don't
Latin
think
doesn't
Latin
have any.
Latin does not have the, if I remember correctly. But it's interesting because we say, oh yeah, Greek has 24 different words for the, and you're like, oh no, that's crazy, that's impossible. How do you ever learn anything? Well, once you learn those 24 forms of the,
It's
like
very
all
helpful.
of the nouns.
Yeah, it
Like,
helps you to get the nouns
You
right.
have all the nouns.
Yeah, that's good though.
Whereas in English, if you learn the, you learned a word. Good job. There's a bunch more. Have fun.
And the tricky thing in English is learning when to use the and when not to. And I mean, that's
tricky
in a lot of
in
languages
Greek too.
Yeah,
Because like they just
always
throw
tricky.
that thing around.
Well, they use it sometimes when you least expect it, and then other times you expect it and it's not used.
Like I didn't even realize until fairly recently, in Koine Greek, I don't know if it's the same for modern Greek, but in Koine Greek, the Bible Greek, the can be used as a pronoun. You can have the just standing by itself, And someone who knows Koine Greek will be, that's he or she or it. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah,
That's
that's table or chair or whatever like you were
It's
talking
like,
about.
oh yeah,
because,
that's Jesus.
Yeah.
That's just Jesus. And when you think about it, it does kind of make sense because we'll say the table. Well, in
they just
context,
leave off the table.
they just drop the table and they're just like the. And since it's part of the conversation, they just expect everybody to know what they're talking about, which is really kind of genius.
And yet at the same time, I can only imagine the level of misunderstandings in America if we. I mean, people have enough trouble if you say the table. They're like, wait a minute, which table? Do you mean do you mean all the table? Well, yeah, there's so.
But see,
If they
that's
just
the
said
thing.
the, it'd be like,
That's the thing. In Greek, since you have so many different forms of the always has to match whichever noun it's talking about.
That's true.
So it would match table perfectly.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't just be the table. It would be the table. And
Table?
you know by the pronunciation of the what they're talking about.
Vabel.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why it wouldn't work in English because we don't do that.
Yeah.
We just have the
Yeah.
throw it all around the, and it's interesting too. Like, we would say go to the store, but we would never say go to the Walmart. But Walmart's a store, so why wouldn't?
And they do that all the time.
Which time do we do
the Jesus Christ.
Yeah. We would never put the before somebody's name.
That's why
the
we don't.
Xander
That's
and the
why
James
we don't do.
are having the Bible class.
That's why we don't do the Walmart. Is because Walmart is a proper name
noun
for a specific group of stores.
But now, one thing that I do wish they do more of in Greek and maybe in Hebrew, whatever, but I don't even know enough about Hebrew to know what they do or don't do in it. But in Greek, I wish they had capitalization. Would it not be awesome if you knew whether there was a capital P on pneuma or a lowercase p on pneuma, whether it's the Spirit, or just the Spirit?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Is it the human spirit or is it God's Spirit? And if they did the capitalization thing like we do, it'd be a lot easier to figure that out.
For that matter, is it just some wind blowing by? Because
that
pneuma
too
also just means wind.
Yeah. The wind. So when Jesus talks to Nicodemus and he says, "The wind blows," and you don't know, he probably uses pneuma there.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I'd have to. I haven't studied.
And
that in Greek
if that is pneuma, I
and
wonder
then he
if
turns
he's
around
actually
and says,
talking
"So
about.
it is with everyone with the Spirit who has the Spirit." So it's like in the translation we've translated distinct. I don't know. We'll have to look that up some other time. We are already a long way into this
We
video.
forgot to look and see if Israel has squirrels.
That's because you talk too long.
We got to look up whether or not Israel has squirrels. Okay.
We still have to.
Like, this is important to me.
I found out that Russia has deer, but they look really weird.
Or are they like the fang-toothed deer?
Oh, well, no, I didn't see one of those. Those are weird for sure.
Those are
the vampire deer.
Yeah.
But no, these are just like they have like a super long skinny neck, and then their antlers are almost like a pronghorn antelope antler, except it goes like backwards and down. It's really odd. Yeah.
Their antlers, like the points go down?
Yeah, well, like it goes up and back, and then like, whereas like a spike we would have, it would go up, and then there'd be like one spike sticking up.
Like
they
with
have
a bull?
they have like one spike sticking down. I mean, they have the main spike that goes kind of up, but then the other one goes like back behind them instead of in front of them. It's really odd.
I'll have to see a picture of that sometime.
I'll
But anyway.
show it to you.
All right, so one of the reasons we've been just messing around for the beginning of this is because we're on the references to prayer. Prayer mentions,
and we always like to throw in a little extra Bible knowledge and language things and
just random topics that you may find interesting
because
we find them interesting. So why not pass them on?
And some of these I'm not sure when we say prayer references, and they're kind of listed as, oh, this is a reference to prayer. But sometimes it's kind of the line between like praising God and praise to God. It's like, now, like the difference between praising and praying. Sometimes it's hard to tell, and that's kind of the case with this first one. It's like, maybe they were praying, and maybe they were like just celebrating and
Yeah.
praising God, and
Yeah.
which that's still a pretty cool thing to do. But this first one
Yeah.
especially, we're still in Second Chronicles. We'll finish that up with the references to prayer in Second Chronicles today, and they had the big time celebration and sacrificing to God. This was, of course, remember after Asa's prayer for victory, and God granted them the victory where they didn't, they got all of these spoils and everything, and then they come back later and they're bringing the sacrifices from the spoil, and lots of sheep, lots of oxen. They have a covenant to the Lord, and then they said, anyone who will not seek the Lord, and maybe that phrase "seek the Lord" might have a reference to worshiping God, following after God, the God of Israel, should be put to death. So they were pretty serious about this stuff. I mean, we don't, as Christians, we don't really do that. We don't say if there's anyone who won't seek the Lord, we'll put them to death.
Yeah.
The Muslims still do.
I was going to say, we leave that to the Muslims. They can have at it.
Yeah, the hardcore, fundamental, I don't know whatever word you want to choose, the extremist Muslims, I guess they say. I mean, but it is, yeah, they did.
There you go.
Young or old, man or woman, they didn't care.
But I mean, hey, that
19-year-old boy,
that
even an older than me guy.
That is a good way to
yawn.
Make sure everybody's following God.
You waited over 10 minutes into the video this time.
I mean, it's like, hey, we want everybody to follow God. Okay, well, if they don't follow God, kill them. I mean, they either start following God or they die. Either way, everybody starts following God.
Yeah, or they run away and get to another country. Right?
There's a reason the Muslims, the hardcore ones, work the way they do.
Yeah,
and
we'll get to see some of that. I saw yesterday the Taliban has said they're going to start chopping people's hands off if they steal stuff again. They hadn't been doing that in Afghanistan for
Sharia,
the last 20
yay.
years. Yeah, so they're gonna start that back up. So that's always fun. Because once you chop off that second hand, the guy really can't. I mean, he's probably not going to steal anything else. I mean,
Unless he's
a lot
really talented.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot harder to steal after that.
Which I feel like if he's that talented, then he
probably shouldn't have got caught.
Yeah, he wouldn't have gotten caught the first 2 times.
Yeah, for real. But I always remember the case of in the old Robin Hood movie where he's like just sticks his hand out there. Okay, cut it off, and they're like no, and then they tie the rope around it and they're holding it, and then he waits till the last second and yanks the guy across, and they chop the other guy instead of him. You seem you want to tie him down in a better way than like having somebody else hold the. Wow, no, not me. Wait, you were supposed to chop his hands off, not mine. Anyway, all right. So then, they were gonna kill anyone who wouldn't, and they swore the oath to the Lord with a loud voice, with shouting and with trumpets and with horns. Yep. So, I mean, they really got into this. This was not just let's kind of do better. They really seriously. Let's put this thing right. And remember, Asa was the one who, he'd been cutting down the high places and breaking down the altars of the false gods they'd been worshiping and stuff, trying to get people back to God. And now the people are behind it. It's not just the king saying you should be worshiping God and following God. The people are saying, okay, let's get serious about this thing. And while maybe we don't want people to be quite that fanatical,
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit of that devotion
Listen, if
in
you're
your life is not a bad thing. A little bit.
devotion's good, but if you're in the church and you're threatening to kill people because they're not following God,
Yeah, you probably missed some things in the New Testament.
yeah,
You probably
just a couple.
probably are still confused about the Old Testament versus the New Testament or something. Yeah, but today, we have disfellowship, we have church discipline,
And
or-
even then, that one isn't used. Those aren't used.
it's
very
not used
often.
very often. And maybe it should be used more often.
Maybe.
I mean, maybe it's not effective because it's not used. Right. So, but they swore the oath to the Lord, which I guess if we're talking about we're praying to God, we're talking to God, they're making an oath to God. So I guess in a sense that's kind of a prayer mention there. The other one, a little bit more clearly a mention of prayer. This one from 2 Chronicles 33 verses 10 through 16. And remember, we talked about Hezekiah before. We had the prayer lesson on Hezekiah's prayer and him getting the extra time, and then his son Manasseh and what a disaster that turned out to be. However, in 2 Chronicles 33, we see that, Manasseh's right where we expected him to be after
Now,
50 some odd years of just being a horrible king.
the beginning of this is really interesting because it says the Lord spoke to Manasseh. Now, I'm assuming that he spoke through a prophet and not like the
Probably.
patriarchs and just spoke to Manasseh.
Although, yeah.
Because for a split second, I was like, he spoke to Manasseh and Manasseh didn't listen? Like, whoa.
Yeah, you've got to be really hard-headed if God speaks to you and you don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the Pharisees. God spoke to them every day, and they just like, no, we don't want to listen to you.
Yeah, but he spoke to them as a human. That makes it a little different.
They were a little confused, I think.
He did confuse them quite a lot.
Yeah, and so the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, and probably that would have been through a prophet. That tended to be the way.
Yeah.
I mean, even with somebody like David, God did, and it's odd, isn't it? I mean, here's the king, and then here's this prophet that nobody even knows. God speaks to the prophet and gives him the message to take to the king instead of speaking directly to the king.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's an odd dynamic, really.
I've always wondered
that.
How did they know which prophets were from God and which ones were just some country hillbilly guy in his head he wanted to put a word in the king's ear?
To the king.
Well,
there were a lot of different things that the Bible, even in under the old law, they pointed out some things. One was obviously if they prophesied something of the future and it came to pass, then you listen to them. One was, are they telling you to go follow some other gods besides the Lord? That was an obvious one.
Yeah.
Like, no.
But still,
but
I feel like this
did they do any miracles of any kind?
I feel like this was an actual issue with the prophets of the day and age because you have situations like when Ahab and
Jehoshaphat.
Is it Jehoshaphat?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay. When Ahab and
they were
Jehoshaphat
together and they wanted to go to war.
When they go to war, they're
And
asking
Micaiah.
they're asking a group of prophets, and all the prophets are like, "Yeah, go up to war; it'll be fine."
You'll win. And then there's the one that.
And then
But
like,
see, Ahab knew, because when Jehoshaphat but all those prophets that came in were prophets who worshiped Baal. They were Baal's prophets. And so there's that first, if they tell you, let's go worship other gods, then they're false prophets.
Yeah.
But then when Jehoshaphat, isn't there a prophet of the Lord? See, he knew, Jehoshaphat knew that none of those guys were prophets of the Lord.
How that goes?
That's pretty close.
Ow.
Don't hurt yourself. That's pretty much the way that goes. And so Jehoshaphat says, is there somebody? And he's like, well, there's this one other guy, Micaiah, but I hate him because he doesn't ever say anything good to me. Well, he doesn't say anything good to you because you're worshiping Baal instead of God. That's why he doesn't say anything good to you. And so Jehoshaphat's like, well, let's call him in here and see what he has to say. And then what good did it do? Because Jehoshaphat didn't listen. He still went to war with Ahab. didn't pay any
Which,
attention.
admittedly, did not turn out poorly for him.
Well, I mean, not as poorly as it did for Ahab. I mean, Ahab should have listened. I mean, when he tells you you're going to die, and Ahab's solution was, oh, well, we'll let Jehoshaphat dress up like the fancy king, and I'll go in disguise so nobody will see me. Like he was going to hide from God's wrath by doing that way. I mean, well, there's your plan. Are you finding it? Yes.
Yeah.
Did you look up Micaiah? Who did you look up? Ahab.
I couldn't remember how to spell Micaiah. I know there's like
that not
two A's and an I and an
a
H
bunch of and a C and an M and a
stuff happens.
and,
Okay.
yeah. Micaiah. It's not as easy to spell as Micah. Micah's an easy one to spell. Micaiah is a little more difficult. So are you finding the section?
Yeah, is it in Chronicles or is it in Kings?
I would think it's in Kings, but it's because he was a king of the northern tribe. Chronicles, by the way, I mean, I don't know if maybe you're familiar with this. First and Second Kings covers the tribes of Judah and their kings and the tribes of Israel and their kings, and kind of goes back and forth. This king was over Israel and they did this, and then this king was over Judah and they did this, and back and forth. But the First and Second Chronicles is the chronicles of the kings of Judah. So it's Saul and David and Solomon, then that line then after David and Solomon, and it doesn't really bring in the ones of the northern kingdom into the situation. So what do you find?
So it doesn't specifically say, oh, he called in these prophets and they're prophets of Baal.
It doesn't say
But
it.
considering it is the northern
But
king,
but what you're looking at, well, and it's Ahab.
Yeah. And
Ahab
there's
is like
400 of them.
Oh, that seems to be. Oh, wait, that's how many prophets of Baal there were.
Huh.
That when Elijah fought with them on Mount Carmel. But if you look though, it's Jehoshaphat saying, "Is there not a prophet of the Lord here?"
Yeah, and
that's how you know the other 400 guys weren't.
And it's interesting because first he says, "Ask for a message from the Lord first." And so then he brings in the prophets of Baal, and like you can tell Jehoshaphat's not satisfied.
It's like, wait, no, I thought we wanted a word from the Lord, not from the Baal prophets. But yeah, there were ways. They had things, and if the thing they said didn't come to pass, then they were a false prophet. What are you in about?
Like throughout all this prophecy, one of the prophets he makes iron horns for himself. So all the prophets are over there prophesying. Dude goes out to a blacksmith shop and just starts hammering away. Comes back and he's like, beat him up.
Well, I mean, maybe he'd already had them made in preparation for coming before the king. He might have, when the king said, hey, y'all come prophesy, he might have said, hey, I need to get these and take them. But anyway, so back to Second Chronicles, though. While the Ahab and Jehoshaphat, and it is true, the prophet. How do you know a prophet's a true prophet? It was a challenge, but God gave them guidelines to go by, to follow, to know whether the prophet was a true prophet, and that's the thing. And sometimes it would take, sometimes the first time the prophet said something, you might not know, but then when it came to pass, like they said it would, then you'd start to know, oh, okay, this guy's the real deal.
Another one that I just saw is like when the prophets of Baal are prophesying, they're just like, oh, do this, it'll go great. But when the prophet of the Lord comes in, it's not like this needs to happen. It's more of
hey, yeah, go ahead, things will go great.
Well, the first time, yes. But then they're like, listen, tell us what God actually said. And then he's like, okay. And
Let me tell you the truth then.
Okay, so there was this vision and I saw a bunch of random stuff and God said this to me. And it's much less straightforward.
Yeah.
Like the prophet from God, like, it seems like...
Well, I mean, it's not always that way. Because like when Isaiah comes to Hezekiah, he's just like, set your house in order, you're going to die.
I mean, Isaiah, I feel like Isaiah was a bit of a special case between him and God. Like,
Isaiah
they were
was
a bit different.
But I mean, all of the prophets were a bit different.
That's true.
I mean, yeah, they weren't your regular Joe. Except for Jonah, and he was a bit different in a whole bunch of different ways. Yeah.
But anyway, we're running low on time.
Here we are, so let's finish up 2 Chronicles 33.
All right, so bad things happen. Manasseh, of course, you expected
and
that.
God warns them. They don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
So God says, okay, I'm going to teach you a lesson.
So God winds up actually sending the king off to Assyria
As
a prisoner.
a prisoner, yeah.
And while he's there, he was in distress. He entreated the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers.
Yeah.
He prayed to him, and God was moved by his entreaty and heard his plea and brought him again to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord was God.
I'm trying to remember the details of what happened. I'm trying to remember if 2 Kings tells if this was the time. I'm trying to remember if it was Manasseh that had his eyes gouged out. That'd help you see more clearly. I mean, help you see what's important. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there were some problems, but yeah, he did humble himself.
Yep.
And he entreated the favor.
And once he got back to Judah, he lived up on it. He restored God's altar. He turned some things around.
He prayed. And, I mean, you think about a guy who's... If Manasseh, after 50-something years of being wicked and all the things he did, and he cried out to God for mercy and prayed to him and, if he could turn his life around, anybody can turn their life around.
Yeah.
And it just shows the incredible desire that God has to forgive. Because for most of us, long before it got to that point, we would have been like, this guy I'm never have anything to do with him again.
Yep.
But God, even after all that, and even after trying to warn him and he wouldn't listen, and then he, sends him into bondage and he has to suffer there as a prisoner, and then for him to pray, then it finally sunk in. It's tough. I mean, to imagine just how gracious and merciful and long-suffering God is. I mean, when Peter said God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance, he really means he wants all people to come to repentance. Even King Manasseh.
Yep.
Even as wicked a king as he was worse than some of the kings of Israel. He was worse than Ahab. I mean, even Ahab didn't go as... Ahab worshiped Baal and stuff, but at least Ahab didn't sacrifice his own son on the altar to a false god. I mean, at least he wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
As bad as he was. So, yeah, that's something... It's okay. Relax.
It scared me
It's
for a
just magnets.
second. Yeah.
But anyway, so we've traveled all over. I mean,
we've been some places.
We've been to past tense and been to Russia and Greek articles and and to prayer mentions in 2 Chronicles. So hope that these were helpful to you, and let me know whatever your situation is in your life. Whatever sin you might have, even that other people don't know anything about.
It's not as bad as Manasseh.
And it's not so bad that God won't forgive you.
Yep.
And that he doesn't want you to come back.
Yep.
So come back. What are you waiting for? I mean, does God have to send you into captivity? Gouge your eyes out so you can see? I have to look up whether that was actually Manasseh. I know that happened to some of the other kings of Judah at the end, but I was
Yeah.
thinking there was something about it happening to Manasseh.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I have to look that one up for sure. Anyway,
We'll see y'all next time.
have a good one. Bye.